We'll call the meeting to order, and first order of business is to establish a quorum.
Dr. Sullivan?
Here.
Ms. Schafelt? Here. Dr. Bradbury? Here. Dr. Lazarchuk?
Here.
Ms. Laredo? Ms. Laredo?
Yes, sorry, couldn't find that mute button.
Thank you. Dr. Sequoia?
Here.
Ms. Esri? Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. During the last month, Dr. Payton sent me a text notifying me that she was resigning from the MDC. With her present workload at the university and looking after the health of family members, she is finding it difficult to also do the work of the MDC at the level that it needs to be done. We thank Dr. Payton for her contributions to the MDC. We greatly appreciate her perspective and her contributions to the committee. Action item 2 is public comments on items that are not on the agenda.
As the moderator, we are now accepting public comment for items not on the agenda. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. Speakers will be given a 3-minute time limit. And let us take just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Please. And there's no public comments from the room here. Okay, item 3 is review and approve the July 19th, 2022 committee meeting minutes. Any corrections or additions from the committee? You have to have a motion before we go to the public, right? No?
Oh, yeah, you should give it up. Sorry.
Let's go ahead and get a motion for the minutes, and then we can open it up for comment for the committee and the public.
I move to accept the minutes.
I second.
I'll second.
Okay. Any comments from the committee?
Just for clarity, we have Maria Esri making the motion and Dr. Bradbury seconded. I know Dr. Sequoia jumped in after, but we have that for the record.
Any comments from the committee, either here or online? Any comments from the public in the room first? Seeing none, moderator, could you ask if there's any comments online?
We are now accepting public comments on the meeting minutes. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Okay, then we're moving on to agenda item 4.
We need to vote first.
I guess we need to vote, huh? Okay.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Ms. Schafelt?
Yes.
Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Dr. Dr. Lazarchuk?
Yes.
Ms. Laredo?
Yes.
Dr. Sequoia?
Yes.
Ms. Esri?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Agenda item 4, update and discussion regarding Assembly Bill AB 1282, which is the animal blood bank bill. Jessica?
So at this time, I'd invite Dr. Brady up from the California Department of Food and Agriculture. As a reminder, members, this is as a result of AB 1282, which was the animal blood banking bill. As part of that legislation, CDFA is required by statute to work with stakeholders to create blood bank guidance for veterinarians, and so this is the draft guidance document that they're seeking input on. So you can come right up here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. My name is Sean Brady. I'm with the California Department.
Is your microphone on, just so that people?
Hello.
Is there a button on the front?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. I'll start over. My name is Sean Brady. I'm from the Department of Food and Agriculture, where I started in June. My position was created as part of AB 1282 to manage the animal blood bank program, which, for anyone that's not familiar, aims to transition the state from closed colony blood banks to community blood banks, and that's for commercial blood that's for sale in the state of California. The other part of AB 1282 that we are working on is the creation of an animal blood banking guidance document that we're required to put together. We've worked with stakeholders from private practice and academia to put something together, and then solicited feedback from all of our stakeholders that we've been able to identify. So CVMA, FDA, USDA, and then our current blood banks, and also reached out to the Association of Veterinary Hematology and Transfusion Medicine to get their input. We've, I think, put a document together that covers all of the requirements listed in AB 1282 and are still in a draft format, but seeking further comment and feedback from the Veterinary Medical Board as we are working in conjunction with you to get this put together.
Okay. It looks very complete and thorough, although I have no background in blood banks, but it is extensive and great detail. Do any members of the committee, either here or online, have comments? Dr. Bradbury.
Hi, thank you for coming. This is really helpful, and this is a very thorough document. I love the resources that you used. I had a couple of questions, just so going into the testing of the laboratory evaluation. It looks like you used the ACVIM guidelines for mostly for deciding what bloodborne pathogens to test for.
That's where we started, and then speaking with some of our technical experts from UC Davis and others in the blood banking industry, we actually came up with a little bit of a different recommendations, and some of that, some of our panel felt that that document was slightly outdated and needed to be updated. So we worked with people in the state of California that we wanted to ensure we were testing for things specific to our state.
Okay, great. And so I have a couple of things. So one, it's a technical thing, it's not a big deal, but the mycoplasma, like hematoparvum, and on the dogs, and then on the cat, the hemominutium. I think technically, I don't know, maybe I'm outdated, it's candidatus mycoplasma, so I don't know if we want to just...
Let me look into that. That's constantly evolving, and I have to make sure we're up to date. I believe I had spoken with some of our expert panel at UC Davis, and they had me change things to get to be the most up to date.
Okay.
But I'll double check that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, when I did my little master's thesis was a long time ago,
Sure.
And it's kind of the latest literature that I found, but it doesn't mean that it's correct. They change names all the time.
They certainly do.
So I just wanted to...
No, thank you. I appreciate
Yeah, and then just in the feline one, and I'm guessing this is probably from UC Davis. So in the ACVIM consensus statement, it had the mycoplasma, hemominutium, and Candidatus mycoplasma, turacensis, kind of on the same level, with the hemiminutum being prevalent in a lot of healthy cats. And but so I can see testing for it, but I just didn't know, is it because turacensis isn't very common in California that you chose not to put that on the list as well? Or
that's a great question. I'll have to go back and ask. I don't know myself.
Okay.
I've kind of ceded to some of our people that are blood banking experts on why we changed some of those, but I will try to get clarification from that, and I can get back to you.
Yeah, I think both of those, it's very rare to cause disease in cats.
Sure.
But they are in the blood. So anyway, I just wondered why you chose to keep one in and not the other. And
I'll have to go back and look at my notes. I don't remember all the specifics of our mycoplasma discussion.
Okay. Well, we could email after
let's do
if you
that.
want,
And
like
then,
that way.
yeah, maybe you can even track some changes on my document and send me some of the specific
comments and questions?
mycoplasmic
Okay.
questions,
Yeah,
and we'll get everything clarified for you.
Cool. That's a very professional word, but I just used it. Let's see here. The other was, I think you said here, consider requiring this for FELV and FIV, consider requiring PCR negative. I mean, I think that's a good idea because it's a more sensitive test. Are you guys going to probably go with that?
Yeah, I think some of the discussion was a lot of the literature doesn't say to require PCR, but we were thinking for the, they're not as sensitive. So we were trying to find a balance on what we want to require versus what makes the most sense. And I think we probably will end up with requiring PCR.
Okay, cool. Again, very professional. I'll have to work on not saying that. I've been hanging around with my husband too much. And then on the feline requirements, physical examination, there's a line that says animals with murmurs should be excluded. And I understand the reasoning behind that. I guess there's a lot of cats that have dynamic murmurs that aren't pathologic, and I worry that this would exclude many cats, and so I just wondered if animals with murmurs should be excluded unless an echocardiogram.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable thing. We wanted to try to err on the side of caution and not cause any issues. But yeah, I completely agree that we probably are limiting our donor pool with that. I will try to find a way to word it so that if we perform an echo and an echocardiogram doesn't identify any underlying heart disease, we might be able to include those animals. That's a great suggestion.
Okay, cool. I have to stop saying it. I can't. Okay, and then down in the blood collection section for canine and feline blood collection, I was both of them have the in the SOAPs the SOPs, the use of sedative and tranquilizers if required, and being having that listed out. I don't see anything that says that, particularly for the cats, that a physical exam needs to be performed on any patient needing the sedation or anesthesia. It seems obvious because that's part of our Practice Act, but I just thought it might be helpful to have that.
Yeah, I don't have the document in front of me, but I will absolutely make sure that it says the animal should be examined. Yeah, we will.
But I'm wondering what the rest of the group thinks about that too. So I have a couple more things, but I've said a lot, and so I thought maybe I would just keep going.
Yeah.
Okay. And then let's see here. What is this? Oh, there's some editing things which I'll show you. I'll send you.
Yes. It's a big document. I'm sure I still have some typos
not a
in
big
there.
deal. Yeah. Okay. And then collection bag information in the process to ensure adequate mixing of anticoagulants. I actually did some blood bag studies when I was a resident, and we had those rockers, and I guess it says that they could be manually rocking or squeezing the bag, which kind of leaves some room for error. And I feel like if people are actually doing this and selling the blood, and, you know, maybe it would have an actual rocker or squeezer. What were your...
Yeah, I initially had that in. I believe someone that was working, I don't remember who, I can go back and look at my notes at some point, in feline blood collection thought it wasn't as practical with the size of the blood bags on the rocker, if my memory serves correctly. So they asked if we could remove that specific requirement and just ensure adequate mixing, whether it was someone fully assigned to that or just some way spelled out in their protocols that then we would approve at the time of product registration with CDFA.
Okay, that seems reasonable. I was like, oh, why can't they have a rocker?
Yeah.
It actually makes it harder to do. And then there was, under the pulse rate and strength for monitoring, there was a comment that it says if pulse cannot be accurately acquired during blood collection, it should be recorded immediately before and immediately after the donation process. So in that situation, like one of the whole things or one of the main things that are being monitored for them, this not going well for a patient is their pulse. And so that kind of concerned me that, you know, why wouldn't they be able to monitor their pulse? And that would be like they don't have enough staff or...
Yeah, actually, I had that in my initial version of this as well. And then numerous people currently working in blood banking said sometimes the way the dogs are being held, actually trying to acquire the pulse can extend the actual procedure, or it can be really difficult to... It can make it more difficult, make the dogs more uncomfortable to be trying to obtain a pulse during the actual collection itself. So we ease that requirement. I can try to reword things so that if there's any concerns during it, we jump in and try to get a pulse rate or a heart rate. But yeah, absolutely, we know it's one of the things we want to be monitoring, but some of the feedback from people working in the industry was that it's just more difficult than it sounds.
I bet it is. Okay, well that's a good. It's great that you've actually talked to them about these things. You've done really great work here. And let's see here. I was talking about the type of monitoring, but there was also the criteria for ending the procedure: pallor, stress, discomfort, tachypnea, tachycardia. And then it doesn't really say what to do when they end the procedure. And did they talk about if that were to happen, do they typically give fluids to the patient? And should we put that in there?
Sure, I think that's a great suggestion. I'll work on adding that. I haven't talked specifics about it. I guess in my mind it was we should end this and then treat that animal as a patient that's now a case and then address it from there. So I can try to add wording that makes it then at veterinary discretion to give necessary treatments. I think fluids are obviously one of the most typical things that we give to our patients having an issue with blood donation.
Great. Let's see, I think that was just the exam. I think that was it. Thank you for going through my grilling here.
No, I appreciate it. All feedback is welcome. We're trying to get a nice, thorough document that will be a resource for people interested in starting a blood bank.
Yeah, you've done a great job, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, these are veterinary clinics. Do we see any other role than the oversight of any other clinic? I mean, are we being asked to write any regulations related to this?
Nope.
Okay.
We may be working on regulations at the CDFA level to spell out how some of our enforcement of this will work and how that will work on putting that together next after we get this guidance document finished.
Okay. Any other comments from the committee, either here or online?
I just had one comment or question.
which was the post-collection care and monitoring. It says it may include contacting owner, discussing recovery, and next visit for donation. I know in the human world, when you donate blood, there's like those handouts that say, if you see this, this, or this, you should contact us. Is that something that potentially would work for animal blood banking as well, or is there?
Yeah, I think that could work. I think we were trying to leave room for each in place to do it how they wanted to, whether that was a phone call follow-up or sending home, something like that. We haven't really discussed if we wanted to require documentation sent home or a conversation, but I wanted it something spelled out in protocols that are submitted at the time of a product registration so that we can ensure there is some method of letting owners know what to expect in their pets.
Which seems great, because I just concerned if it's the next visit for donation, by then the blood would be
Sure.
processed and all those things.
Yeah,
So,
no, that's totally
there's
reasonable, and we can
probably-
try to spell that out a little bit more.
But yes, very thorough. I don't know much about blood banking, except for having gone to some CEs for in-house stuff, and it looks great.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
Under
Dr. Scoia?
under the collection, I see post-collection care and monitoring. Positive reinforcement is recommended to support future donations. That's great, but it's not specific as to whether it's positive reinforcement for the dog or for the human. Could we specify a little more?
Absolutely, I can try to specify, maybe both.
It's a minor thing. The document looks very good, very detailed.
Thank you.
Dr. Bradbury?
I just had kind of a general question, and I'm sorry if I don't understand this already. People can set up community blood banks that are not veterinary clinics. Is that correct, or do they have to be associated with a veterinary clinic based on this?
It does specify that there is a premise permit associated with this, so Jessica?
Yeah, so in the bill 1282, it made it the definition of veterinary medicine includes collecting blood. So in anywhere that veterinary medicine is being practiced, you have to have a premises registration. So it will by default have to be in any kind of registered practice.
Okay, so they'd have to fall under a whole hospital. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Then we'll open this up for public comment. Any public comment from this room? Seeing none, moderator, could you open it up for any online comment, please?
We are now accepting public comment for agenda item 4. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We'll call on people when we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments and suggestions. We'll work on getting those in the next version, and I'll send it to Jessica once I have that completed.
Thank you. The next agenda item is number 5, update from Equine Practice Subcommittee. Marie?
So since being assigned to this subcommittee, Dr. Sullivan and myself have reviewed numerous documents surrounding the issues that were raised at the January board meeting. These documents included CVMA's April 2022 presentation and letter, the California Horse Racing Board's letter of concerns, pending accusations, AAEP clinical guidelines, records from a U.S. Senate hearing regarding medication and performance-enhancing drugs in horse racing, and the Federal Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act. In addition to that, we've met with board staff and legal counsel to receive background on the board's involvement in veterinary practice on racetracks and collaboration with the CHRB over the last 5 years. Dr. Sullivan had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Stuart Brown at Keeneland Racetrack in Lexington, Kentucky, and received a behind-the-scenes tour of the facility by the track safety director. He then participated in a roundtable discussion with 6 leaders of the thoroughbred racing industry, and topics of discussion included the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act, the issues in California, including the past problems at the Santa Anita racetrack and board issues, as well as workforce issues, including recruiting and retention of equine veterinarians. In addition to that, I have touched base with many equine practitioners that I've worked with over the years to get a feel for their thoughts on current issues and how that relates to current regulations. We met with CVMA to hear their concerns, which centered around California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Section 2032.1, the VCPR, and 2032.3, record keeping. They also expressed concerns about confusion among equine practitioners about dual jurisdictions with the board and CHRB. They made some recommendations, including defining the term client, as well as looking at ways to record the VCPR in herd settings in addition to individual patient settings. We met with the CHRB, who raised concerns with the board enforcing California Code of Regulations Title 4, Section 1867, dealing with substances and medications that have not been approved by the FDA. The board interprets this regulation as written. However, CHRB contends that the regulation permits the use of these drugs where no FDA-approved medications exist. We also discussed the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act and the potential impact that it will have on these issues. Yesterday, we met with UC Davis representatives to discuss what they're teaching students regarding record-keeping requirements and how that fits with current regulations. We look forward to continued collaboration with CVMA, CHRB, UC Davis, and other stakeholders to continue to work through these issues.
Okay. Any ask for comments?
Yes.
Any comments from the board or board members here or online? Dr. Bradbury?
Sorry, always having. So I just, on your memo, thank you guys for taking this on. I'm interested also in what you guys found at with the meeting yesterday. But in your memo on page 3 at the top of the first paragraph, when you're talking about the VCPR creation through a trainer rather than the animal owner, and I totally understand that. I actually have worked on the track. I know it's hard to believe, but I was licensed in the track as well. But in any case, in small animal medicine, when a pet is being trained or at a boarding facility, there's a document that's signed by the owner that allows the people taking care of the animal to make medical decisions. And I am wondering if that perhaps would be the way to work through this, because I do worry that, the consumer who we're trying to protect is often the owner of these horses, and if they don't know what's happening with their horse and the trainer is making these decisions, and they haven't approved that, then are we protecting the consumer? And so, while I understand the challenges of it, I also feel like we have to still keep in mind that the people who own these horses also deserve their own protection. And so anyway, that was just one of the sentences in here that made me think about how does that, if we were to say, oh, well, trainers are the client now, it takes away the rights of the owners of the horses in some ways. That was, I think, my biggest comment. And then the next sentence, let's see. The concern about requiring a general or preliminary diagnosis to create a VCPR, although there may be no diagnosis of disease when providing preventative or prophylactic treatment. I mean, we do this in small animal medicine, and I haven't done a lot of equine stuff, so I can't speak for that. But in small animal medicine, we see healthy animals all the time and we do an exam, we write in the assessment healthy pet, and then we do vaccines and preventatives and things like that. So I wasn't clear as to what the concern was there and whether we are truly requiring a diagnosis to create a VCPR.
I think, I mean, this issue has come up with different meetings, and I think the problem is not, although it's been mentioned, it's not the diagnosis. I think the problem is how do we define a physical exam in different species? And as we get through our work today, what's becoming very apparent in multiple levels is our minimum standards on in record keeping, and it's very prescriptive. And I think the bottom line that I'm getting from this is that we need to look at that. I mean, even OAL is having problems with us on those. So I think I can see that this is going to need to be addressed as part of our work. So which is going to be huge, but it looks like it's going to need to be tackled at multiple levels.
And then on the bottom of page 3, there was the statement, providing medication or performing a procedure on an animal at the client's request is not necessarily a bad thing and can comport with good practice standards. And, you know, I think we have some very equivalent practices in small animal medicine where we do tail docking and ear cropping, artificial insemination, where we're performing procedures on patients at the client's request and not for the health of the animal. So I feel like we already allow for that. So I wasn't sure, like, why that was considered an issue. Like,
I'm not sure that it was considered an issue. It was stated in the discussion, so that's why it's included in there.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. If there's no further comments from the committee, we'll open it up to the public. Any comments from the public in the room? Seeing none, we'll ask the moderator to open it up to see if there's any comments online.
We are now accepting public comment for agenda item 5. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment.
Hi.
Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. Since there's no action items, we don't need to vote. I already asked. Okay, then we'll move on to action item, agenda item 6. And this is update, discussion, and potential recommendations to the board relating to veterinary drug compounding. So as you have read in the background material, during the development of the educational material, the subcommittee, during development of the educational material, the subcommittee, the MDC, and stakeholders found problems in the efficiency of the record-keeping requirements of these regulations. These included a large bottleneck in getting the preparations compounded, identifying the concentrations of the ingredients, methods of determining the expiration dates, tracking office stock, and cumbersome record-keeping requirements for compounded IV fluids when they're used for immediate use. At the July meeting, the subcommittee proposed and the MDC approved a legislative proposal for the board to consider at their meeting tomorrow to amend B&P Code Section 4826.5 to allow veterinary assistant controlled substance permit holders to be able to compound drug preparations under the direct supervision of a licensee. This will address the workforce issue at the hospitals and clinics of getting the preparations compounded and still having consumer protection with having the supervision of a licensed person. As to the rest of the subcommittee's recommendations, when Dr. Miller emphatically says, "I don't understand a thing you're doing," and Tara says, "and you're not even putting it in the medical records," the subcommittee went back to work. We had developed a second form that was confusing, and hopefully we can prove today that it's totally unnecessary. As you read in the narrative for agenda item 6, you will see considerable detail in what we are doing with these recommended changes. As Tara explained to Maria and me, and I'm quoting, "The memos are a critical tool staff uses to create the regulatory documents. So these memos need to discuss each proposed amendment and the intent behind each revision." So we're going to go through the major changes. We're not going to get down into the intent of every one of them. But as we go through them, any questions that come up, we're going to stop and discuss them and make sure that they're clear. So we're going to start, and I'm going to have you go to page 6. So we're going to start with California Code Regs 2036.5, animal hospital healthcare tasks for permit holders. And on page 6, you will see that we've added items C and D. And this will allow permit holders to perform drug compounding from bulk and non-bulk substances under the proper supervision of the licensee. So we're going to kind of break this up and go through them kind of group by group so that we don't have too much to do at the end. So are there any discussions or comments from the committee, including those online, about these two additions to Section 2036.5? Any comments from the public in the room? And would the moderator please ask the public online if they have any questions or comments to this section?
We are now taking public comment on agenda item 6. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you. The next section is Section 2090, definitions. In both A and B, we're doing some cleanup, and then we're also adding, and I quote, "or a permit holder," unquote. I'm going to keep going on the definition. So then in Section 3, or the next item is is adding definitions of E, F, G, and H. I do want to make one minor change in E under immediate use. At the end of that first sentence in immediate use, we're changing the word from on to. So it says immediate use means administration of sterile compounded drug preparations to an animal patient beginning within 4 hours from the time the drug preparation was compounded. So are there any, that takes care of that. So are there any questions or comments from the committee here or online to those changes in 2090? And as you go through, we're going to see where these new definitions fit in so that we can get rid of that second form that was so confusing.
Chair, I had a question.
Yes, Dr. Lazarev.
Hey, where did the 4-hour limit on that come in? Is that a standard?
The original term was referenced in Board of Pharmacy regs. However, U.S. Pharmacopoeia has used this term immediate use in their new in their updated versions of their guidelines. And they did accommodate us a little bit because immediate use originally was within 1 hour of the preparation. And we did ask them if we could get some more leeway there, and they are in the process of defining it. It hasn't been totally approved yet, I don't believe, but they are defining it as within 4 hours.
Okay.
So
thank you.
We're trying to do that to kind of circumvent some of the compounding regulations that we have to do with the paperwork by under the term of immediate use. We don't have to have as strict of guidelines on the record keeping. Did Tara have any comments on it? Are you okay?
I would just add that the point here is efficiency. Yeah, just streamlining the documentation process so that animals can get the care they need, and the staff who we know is dwindling. We're trying to address the lack of staff in veterinary premises. We're trying to help them get the documentation down as required under the drug compounding regulations in a faster manner. And you'll see the term immediate use used for the documentation purposes that we'll discuss shortly.
Okay. Okay, any public comment in the room? Then moderator, could you open it up to any public comment online, please?
We are once again open for public comment on agenda item 6. If you'd like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. So the next section is CCR 2091 on veterinary drug compounding. And here we kind of overlooked that in the original regs that we have, it refers to just the veterinarian in items B and C. And we're also adding now to supervise the performance by an RVT and permit holder. We're adding that to both B and C. And B, it has to do with the complexity of the drug that's being compounded, and in C, it's stating that there's no other human or animal drug approved by FDA. So we're just adding that component because we missed it the first time around. Any comments or questions from committee members, either here or online?
Mr.
Seeing
Chair?
none, moderator, could you?
Mr.
Yeah,
Chair?
I'm sorry, Dr. Sequoia?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Under D, sterile drug compounding shall be for immediate use. Number 2, there is historic documentation of the need, safety, and efficacy of the preparation. Could you define historic documentation? Do you mean in terms of the industry or that individual veterinary clinic?
I'm sorry.
I'm looking at D, sterile drug compounding shall be for immediate
Okay.
use.
That is current law, and it is referenced. It's in existing law right now. So we are amending the parts that are underlined are the parts that we're working on now that we're updating to make it more efficient on the record-keeping part.
I understand, and you've done a good job. It's just I'm asking for clarification for me,
Okay.
since you're
Again, which
knowledgeable
section is
about
it?
this. I'm not.
Again-
I'm not sure what is meant by historic documentation.
Okay. All right. That example comes from, let me back up. When we started doing this, it was brought to our attention. It was actually Anne Marie that brought it to our attention that there's no place in statute that allows veterinarians to do any compounding. So we worked with the Board of Pharmacy and we got the statute put in, and then we started developing the regulations. And what we wanted to capture are those things that we've been doing forever. For example, in my example was adding 1 milliliter of acepromazine to 10 milliliters of ketamine so that when that animal wakes up, it's not banging its head against the wall or against the floor. And that we've been doing for years. So that's the type of experience, that's where this comes in. It's historically documented the need and the safety and efficacy of it. It has stood the test of time. This then does not allow somebody to start experimenting on something just because they want to. So that's what that's there for. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. Have we opened it for public comment online? Okay, so let's go ahead and moderator open this up for public comment online.
We are once again open for public comment on agenda item 6. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment.
Okay, the next section, I'm going to want it on the screen.
Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. And I want to make sure that I didn't forget public comment in the room. Okay. So now we'll go on to 2092, which is the crux of our issues last time. So Marie and I, mainly Marie, put together what we envision is the master formula form. And we're going to put it up on the screen, and this is what we envision the end product to be. However, we can't print it out and give it as an example because these things have not passed into regulations yet. So we can't we can't include it in our educational material until after the regulations get passed.
Do you want the regulation or do you want
The form, Marie's form. No, we mocked up a new one. So we can get started with it. In section 2092 in the bottom of page 8, A2, it's just clean up language and adding a permit holder to the training requirement. And then we go to the top of page 9, where we are defining, where we're using the master formula form, which has been defined back in the definition section. And then the following part is what goes into the master formula form. And you have seen this before in our previous, what we've sent to the board. So, but we have to we're modifying it to satisfy the needs of the record keeping and get rid of that second form that we had. So back in definition, we have the first item there is a unique formula code. And we've got it defined and we're using it here. And as you see that we progress, you'll see how it's going to be used. Let's see here. So this code will follow the compounded drug preparation through the medical records and is necessary because you may have two preparations with the same ingredients, but with different concentrations. Sometimes it will fit, it'll fit more easily on the office stock bottles that are sometimes maybe only 5 or 10 milliliter bottles than trying to put the full name of the preparation on there. So that's unique formula code. And then in number 2 and in B2 and B5, we're now putting in the name of the ingredients, their strength and quantity, because that's not going to change. If you're making that compounded preparation, that's the recipe of putting it together. So again, that was part that we had in that second form, that if we put all of that information in the master formula, we don't need that second form. In the new B4, we have the formula for calculating the expiration date. If it's a sterile product, it's simply going to be 30 days or less, or less if any of the active ingredients have a shorter expiration date. And in all of the non-sterile compounding preparations, it's going to be 180 days or less if any of the ingredients have a shorter expiration date. So that's going to be in the master formula, and the person compounding the product can then quickly figure out what the expiration date is going to be on the preparation. Yeah, the rest is just cleaning up. I'm sorry?
The form is up if you, I don't know.
Oh, yes. I didn't see it on my screen. So, and so the template of the master formula form is on the screen, and it follows the same pattern that we did when we sent it to the board with these additions. Okay, I think we're going to stop there and ask for any, because this is the crux of the changes. So ask if there's any comments or concerns from the committee. Dr. Bradbury.
So I had, on the unique formula code, I thought that was supposed to be for each preparation, not for, so it's a unique formula code for each master preparation?
So the master formula is going to have a list of all the compounded products, and each individual product preparation is going to have a unique code.
Okay.
Because you may have a preparation that has the same ingredients but different concentrations.
Right, 100 mg per mil versus 50 mg per mil.
Yes.
So for each compounded drug, a master formula document may be maintained and include all of the following. So the unique formula code for B. So there's already a master formula form, and then they are having another form.
That's the master formula.
And then
form.
Then they have another form with a unique formula code?
No. Up in the left-hand corner, up by the name, on the left-hand side, there's a space to put your unique formula number on there.
And that's, so you're going to basically, that'll already be filled in somewhere, and the rest of it, and then you put your unique formula code for each time you prescribe a medication?
So you're a clinic, and you're compounding, let's say you're compounding 5 preparations. So you'll write down each one. You'll give them a unique code. You'll give them their name, because you're going to have to charge the client for this. So you're going to have to identify that preparation some way, name or unique code or both. Okay, and then you're going to write down those items, how you know the ingredients, the quantity, the strength, the name. You're going to fill out that, and then you're done with it.
Okay.
So when the person that's compounding the product, they're going to come back to this recipe and do it. And as that preparation then goes forward, as that drug goes forward, you can either use the unique code or its name or both. You're going to have the expiration date on there. You're going to have the date that it's been prepared is that day.
I guess I understand that. I thought the master formula form was something that could be kept somewhere, and maybe I'm misunderstanding this, that could be kept somewhere as a recipe so that you don't have to write all of this out for each preparation.
Correct.
So then why is there a unique formula code on the master formula form?
I believe the concern was on some of the smaller bottles that you're compounding for in-clinic use. You may not be able to fit the full name of the product and all the ingredients. So basically, it would be used as an identifier to put on those bottles. So for example, you have 5 different sedatives, and those are in your master formula form, and they're just identified by S1, S2, S3. And so it's an easier way to label those bottles and identify that.
Tara?
Also, in subsection F, on page 9, 2092, for each compounded drug preparation prepared for an animal patient, you'll need to enter the name of the compounded drug preparation and or the unique formula code. So for each animal you're preparing a compounded preparation for, you're going to indicate in the animal patient's medical record the unique formula code or the name of that preparation that you're getting from that master formula form, probably because you compound that drug for many animals. That's why you have it on a master formula form.
Yeah, no, I think I understand that there's, my question is, like, I understand the utility of what you're trying to do. There's a master formula form as a recipe that is, like, because we had this, right? You have a binder, it has the master formulas, we're making, you know, this for, particularly for stuff that's being sent home or FLK or something, you know, of that nature. You have the master formula in a recipe book, basically, and I envisioned that being the master formula form that had all the inactive ingredients and all of that. But if we're then requiring each time we have a compounded drug preparation, for the way that I'm reading this, and I'm maybe reading it incorrectly, but the way I'm reading this, it looks like under B, for each compounded drug preparation, a master formula document may be maintained on a master formula form and include all of the following, And that means that the unique formula code then goes into the recipe, so there's a new recipe being generated each time. Well, that's what this says. So it says a unique formula form it goes into the master formula form, and it's on the formula code, so that each time, am I not reading that correctly, or am I? I am, right? Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay, Tara.
I think the issue is that B begins with for each compounded drug preparation. So every single preparation, it looks like this master formula form may need to be kept. So perhaps we need to just strike for each compounded drug preparation and instead say a master formula document may be maintained for the compounded drugs prepared at the premises that include all of the following. So instead of it being aimed at every single preparation, it's just, here's a master formula form that you can list your compounded drug preparations, and then from that you can, take your unique formula code and enter that identifier in the animal patient record. So it's not every single preparation. It's just, here's a list of everything we prepare at this premises.
Yeah, like I like that. The thing about this, though, is I believe, if I remember correctly, the whole point of the unique formula code was that every new compounded drug preparation should have a unique formula code assigned to it, correct? Every time you correct, or is it?
So where we're getting confusion here is that in the second form that we developed, we had a unique number there also.
Okay,
that's
this is different. Okay, so this is for that particular recipe, like the master recipe.
Yes.
Okay.
And you don't need to use the unique number.
Okay.
You can use the name. It's just that if you have a preparation with a name and it has two different ways of making it, two different concentrations, now,
you're using A versus B. Yeah. Okay, that helps me a ton. I thought this was for every single one. We're doing a unique thing, because I thought that was a really important thing that was a concern in our last conversations, that there was a unique number to track what was being made.
And you'll also see that it says may. So if somebody decides to do it a different way, they develop a computerized system of doing it a different way, that's perfectly fine. This is just an example to the licensees to get them through this.
Okay.
So for clarification purposes, then in B1, should we change or remove the word unique? Is that confusing?
No, it was for each compounded drug preparation, because it makes it sound like every time it's being compounded, this whole thing has to be generated or should be generated. I think and I again thought that the unique formula code, like every time you made it, it would be this running tally, like this is 1, 2, 3, 4, then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 5, and
that's what we got rid of.
Okay, and then the only other thing I had on it. Thank you for working through that with me.
This is why we're doing it.
Yeah. Then so on F4, it says the name of the compounded drug preparation and or the unique formula code. And I understand because it may not have the right size, or, or be not the right size, but maybe it's so small that it's hard to put it on. I would argue that just for safety purposes, the name of the drug should be on the bottle and not just the formula code. I mean, because when you're in a hospital and you're picking up, say you have an inpatient, you're treating them, the technician or assistant is going through the treatments, and on the record it says use S1, and I feel like the name, it should be the name of the compounded drug preparation and the unique formula code. Yeah.
Okay.
Or just the name.
So there's a difference between what's required to be added to the animal patient record in F4 and what needs to be on the label, and that's under 2094B. So we could talk about the labeling when we get to 2094, but I see your point, because right now we were looking at striking name, strength, and quantity of each ingredient label.
Yeah, and maybe, the strength and all of that, they could potentially look up. Also in the, and I don't want to make extra work, but in the record, like as a doctor going through, like say I had a case transferred to me in the morning from an overnight doctor, and has been seen for a couple of days, and now I'm trying to figure out what medications they're on, and now there's these unique formula codes, and I have to then go and, look that up and hope that there's not a transcription error and, all of that. I feel like for safety purposes, the name of the drug should be in the record, but that's just me.
Mr. Chair, I would agree with Dr. Bradbury. This is Dr. Sequoia. As a safety thing, it's good to have two things that identify the drug, because transcription errors do occur. People get in a rush and grab something and may not notice that it's S1 instead of S7. So I definitely agree with Dr. Bradbury.
Okay, is your recommendations then to remove unique formula code totally?
I would just say name of the compounded drug preparation and the unique formula code, because the unique formula code will tell you what concentration and all of that is.
Sure.
There may not be a unique formula code if the premises is not maintaining the master formula form, so you'd probably want to unredact if any. So it would be name of the compounded drug preparation and the unique formula code, comma, if any.
And that is...
Yes, so we're talking about 2092, subsection F, paragraph 4.
Okay. I mean, if you want to get rid of the unique formula code and you have two products with different concentrations, you could just say A or B. The reason I put it in there was all the time we're using 10 milliliter vials. We're mixing ace-promazine with ketamine, 10 milliliter vials, and you've got to have
somewhere up here.
expiration date, the date that it was formed, prepared, the product itself, and it just, and who's the person that compounded it. I don't know how you're going to get that on a 10 milliliter vial.
Well, right now we're still talking about the animal medical record, not the vial, not the label.
Okay.
Okay, so we can talk about the vial issue under 2094 when we get there for labeling.
Well, I'm talking about it here because if you don't think it needs to be, if we don't need it on that small bottle, office stock bottle, we can get rid of it here.
Not in the animal patient medical record.
Sure, if you're using the name.
Well, I think that keeping it on there is not wrong, because it doesn't have to be on there.
Form, the top line has the unique formula code and the name. So if we're not going to use the unique formula code on, if it's not necessary for following office stock, then it's cumbersome.
Mr. Chair, this is Dr. Sequoia. May I make a comment, please?
Yes.
Okay. Personally, in terms of human drugs, when I go to the pharmacy and pick up a bottle of medication for me, and it's a small bottle and there's a lot of information on the label, they will attach one end of the label to the bottle and then have the rest of the label free. So it's kind of waving in the breeze, but that way all the information is on the label, which is attached to the small bottle. So that may be a way of physically including everything that needs to be included on the label on a small bottle. You just have to not be thinking that the whole label has to be attached to the bottle, just one end.
I know that, but using anesthetic, a 10 milliliter anesthetic bottle over the course of 10 to 15 days, that label is not going to stay on there. Anyway, we'll come back because we're going to be voting on this. So right now the consensus is to leave it and to, on F4, to add, if any, there.
And I am striking or. So I'm showing on the screen everything so far of the changes that we've made since the meeting materials have been posted. So you see that in red.
Okay, good. So we're kind of skipping around here. So let's go back to B, and we've removed for each compounded drug preparation and start with a master formula. So we've got that. Tara?
I think we need to add some additional words in B, line 2. So if we're striking for each compounded drug preparation, which we should, that makes sense. We do need to identify why you would even keep this master formula document. So I think that we need to add some words after form. Jessica, if you'd like to type this. This would be underlined. To identify preparations compounded at the veterinary premises. So I think before preparations, I need drug.
Right.
So this would show you that you can create a master formula document. This would be the master formula form. And this is to identify the drug preparations compounded at the veterinary premises. So this way it gives a little bit more information to the practitioners why they would even keep this form.
I think the wording is compounded drug preparations.
Well, I'm specifically using compounded as an action because they're compounded at this veterinary premises.
Okay.
Not just received from pharmacies separately. This is a formula form for everything that they're compounding at this premises.
Okay, go ahead and read that again. I can't read it up there. A master formula document may be maintained on a master formula form to identify drug preparations compounded at the veterinary premises and include all of the following. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see that. Okay. Okay, since that's a significant change to what you have in front of you, let's go ahead and see if there's any further comments on that from the committee, both here and online. Okay. Any public comment from the room?
Grant Miller, CVMA. I just wanted to comment that this is much more clear than the previous version. So I think that the work that is being done is headed in the right direction. I do appreciate Dr. Bradbury's comments, though, because it demonstrates that every practitioner who reads this may see it a little bit different way, and therefore I feel that the guidance document will be pivotal to the success of the implementation. And the guidance document, which is actually in the next section, is very good, although it will probably need to be updated to reflect some of the more recent changes in these proposed regulations. But overall, I think that we're getting to a better place in making this something attainable. I appreciate the board's proactivity in creating a master formula form, but in fact, it isn't necessary in this regulation. You can say a master formula document may be maintained to include all of the following, and then in the guidance, if you'd like to offer a form, that's fine, great, but you may want to consider whether or not you actually need a quote-unquote master formula form in regulations. I don't mind it being there, it's perfectly fine, but it probably isn't necessary. I also agree that the unique formula code may be unnecessary. When I think about this whole process, I go back to thinking that we're not actually creating something new here, we're actually just trying to get around something that's already happening every day. So what are practices already doing? They're not using a unique formula code. They're probably writing on the bottle, this is ACE 1 part ACE 10 part ketamine on the bottle. And so I think that we probably can go back more towards that to say, well, how are we doing it now in practice? Because no one has an unlabeled bottle. We're writing something on the bottles, I would hope. And so perhaps the master formula code or the unique formula code isn't necessary. We can just write the name and some of the ingredients on there and make that work. So maybe we'll talk about that in the labeling section, but definitely a huge improvement and much more easy to understand. Thank you.
Well, we do have the word may there, so it isn't something that's mandatory. So it is if they want to use it. Tara?
It is and it isn't, because under subsection D, Jessica, if you can scroll down, if you're not creating a master formula form, then you have to document the compounded drug preparation in the animal patient's medical record and include paragraphs 2 through 7 of that. So it's one or the other, which is fine, but there will be some documentation requirement of the compounded drug preparation.
Well, that's where we're using, see, the intent of D was not to go that direction, but that's where we ended up. Dr. Bradbury?
I think that the unique formula code, I think it may be more confusing than helpful in the end.
Okay. I'll have to confess, in my examples with Dr. Miller's prodding there, when we had ketamine in the lockbox and you opened it up, you knew which was diluted, which one had ace-promazine and which one didn't, because the ace-promazine was yellow. So it didn't require a label, in my opinion, but that would not pass an inspection anymore. Okay. Nancy?
I have a comment about B. If you're
Nancy, would you mind turning your microphone on and speaking into the mic, please? Thank you.
Is that better? Yeah, there we go. If there is no master formula form maintained, you're supposed to have put everything from 2 to 7 in the patient record, but 3 says equipment to be used, and 6 says specific compounding steps to be used to prepare the drug. Instructions for, well, okay. I don't see why that needs to be in the patient record.
Again, the word may is there to give them an example of something that they can use. But if they have some other way of having, you know, the recipe for these compounded products, it doesn't have to be in the medical record. The reason that we were dealing with D was because if, for example, you were just making one compounded preparation that you're never going to use again, you didn't have to go through all the steps of the master formula. You could just put it in the medical record.
Right, but it does say that if you're not using the master formula form, that you have to put everything in the patient record, including the equipment to be used. I mean, you have to write how to use a syringe. I mean, all this in the patient record? I mean, that's kind of nuts.
If you're using it one time, yes. You're going to have to explain how you compounded the preparation.
Is an atropine mixed in a syringe?
Okay. That is what U.S. Pharmacopoeia has dictated to us.
Okay.
If we don't set up our guidelines, that's what we're reverting to.
Well, I'm just really concerned that this is going to, veterinary medicine is already costing a lot more, and clients are getting upset about that. This is going to really increase the cost of administering drugs and prescribing drugs astronomically, and I think it's going to be a detriment to the veterinary profession.
Okay, so your recommendation is eliminating 3.
Equipment to 3 and 6.
And you don't think that's necessary if you have a technician doing the compounding?
Not in the patient record. The instructions to the RVT are necessary. But
okay.
You need, I mean, I went to the storage closet and pulled out a syringe. I mean, how much detail are we going to have to put in the patient record that's really irrelevant?
Okay. Dr. Bradbury?
Nancy, I think that's one of very many examples of compounding, and most of the compounding that we're talking about are, yes, there are the injectables, but there's also a lot of, you know, medications that are being sent home and compounded. And like Dr. Miller had mentioned previously, we are already doing all of this, and this stuff has to be in the record anyway. Like, at least that was where we're, like, if you are taking, you know, OraSuite and mixing it with, you know, 2 parts of this type of OraSuite and 1 part of that. I mean, there's actually a recipe that you have to follow, and that has to be documented somewhere. And so I mean, we're just putting words to what we're already doing and trying to make it clear.
It says equipment to be used. So we have to write down that you used a syringe or a cup or whatever you...
Can you speak closer to the microphone?
It just seems absurd to have to list the equipment to be used.
Yeah, I don't know how that would be listed, but...
and also, specific compounding steps have to be listed.
That I think is important, because when you're...
I poured it from one bottle into another, that has to
But
be
there
in the
are
patient
times
record.
where you have to mix it this first, and then the next time, then you have to... There are specific steps in certain...
Well, then, obviously, those things need to be written down, instructions for the person doing the compounding.
That's the specific compounding steps to be used.
But this is what has to go in the patient record, not...
No, this is on the master on the recipe formula.
Yeah, I mean, this
unless you don't have a recipe formula. Yeah.
I can't see requiring this. Nobody's going to do it.
People are already doing this.
That they took a cup.
They have to already be doing this.
Poured a cup of that into a bottle.
Dr. Grant?
So just for clarification, Nancy, in relation to drawing up 2 sedatives in a single syringe for a patient, there is a special consideration in subsection E, which we have yet to discuss, which talks about that if you're doing something for immediate use of some sterile injectable IV products, you can essentially do an abridged version in the record that says that the name, strength, and quantity of those solutions need to be recorded, which we are already doing now. I would also like to just remind everyone that this effort by this board is of great service to the veterinary profession, because if it were up to other boards, we would not be doing this at all. And it took the CVMA years to do statutory change to get us the right to compound within our veterinary practices to meet our patients' needs, and this board is following its mandate pursuant to that statute to create regulations to make that happen. I feel like these regulations have come a long way. They are difficult, but it is correct that a lot of this we are already doing, and it's reflective of what we're already doing. And I would encourage the board to remember that we are not creating something new here. We're just trying to harness what we are already doing, and I think we're getting really close. I do agree. I think the unique formula code maybe is going to end up working against us and creating more confusion. I believe that we can write on these vials. It won't be perfect, but I think it's what we're probably already doing in practice. So I think that deserves a little bit more consideration. Thank you.
I have a comment.
Sarah?
Okay, so just for the committee's consideration, how much of the equipment to be used and the specific compounding steps is really a matter of training versus information that must be kept in the animal patient's medical record?
Oh, I wouldn't disagree with that part, but I think it needs to be in the master formula.
Right, but right now, which, I think we all agree a master formula form is helpful.
Yeah.
That, really provides the guidance for those everyday, whatever, regularly used compounded drug preparations. But if you're not using the master formula form because you don't regularly compound this or for whatever reason, you just don't like using the master formula form, these regulations as they're currently drafted would require the equipment and the technique, the steps to be taken to be documented in the animal patient's medical record. And I think Nancy's point here is that for what purpose does the equipment and the steps to be, taken to compound that medication, what's that for? Is that for an inspection later on that a subject matter expert can confirm that the compounded drug preparation was properly compounded?
I agree with the equipment comment. I didn't even notice that, so thank you, Nancy, for bringing that up. I just kind of glazed over that, but I agree. I don't really know what other equipment other than syringes and to measure things out, needles, that sort of thing. The steps, I think, are a little bit, there are some compounded products that do require specific steps, and I guess in that case, there's like a filter, for example, those sorts of things. But I think the equipment to be used would be, if there was something specific about it, would be in the steps. So I would be okay getting rid of the equipment, but I still feel like the steps are kind of important.
So the suggestion right now is under 2092 subsection D, fourth line, right now the amendment would be required in paragraphs 2 through 7 of subsection B. This is the formula record that's kept in the animal patient's medical record if that master formula form is not maintained. So we would be changing paragraphs 2 through 7 to, what we could do is move up equipment, so then we have items 3 through 7 have to be documented.
But I'm also hearing consensus that we remove unique formula code.
Sure.
So the unique formula code would be removed. The numbering convention would then go back to its original convention, but we move equipment up to 1. And so then it would be 2 through 7.
Okay. Do we need equipment at all?
2 through 6.
Sorry, 2 through 6, yes.
Yeah, equipment is current law.
But with that said, if you feel like you don't need it, I mean, we're doing this whole reg package. So if you feel like it's not necessary, now would be the time to take it out if you want.
If what's not necessary.
Equipment to be used. She asked if equipment to be used is necessary.
I'm trying to think of what equipment we're putting on these masks. Like, what is the equipment?
Dr. Bradbury, you mentioned
Again,
in some instances you're using a filter to compound.
okay, the reason that category is there is that it's following the protocol of U.S. Pharmacopoeia as to what they delineate and what needs to be in their records. So if we're doing such basic things that, you know, syringes and scales don't need to be spelled out, then okay. Grant?
As I was walking up, you said it. So the USP, we're trying to follow the spirit of the USP monographs. The catch is, which has always been, that veterinarians essentially just do what's called simple compounding. We're not really using bulk ingredients. We're not doing a lot of complicated work on this. It's essentially taking 2 FDA-approved products and putting them in one syringe, or adding something to IV fluids, or taking 2 creams and putting them together in one container. And so for that very simple compounding, equipment is really not necessary. But we're trying to stick with the spirit of what compounding is in a general sense, so that we're not criticized by not playing by the rules created in that whole arena, you know, by the other folks. But I agree with you. I think that for what we do, 90% of the time, they're really a syringe is your equipment. There's just not a lot really to say there. I don't think that practitioners are going to inherently understand what the equipment part means, but again, I think a guidance document can really help to discern, like especially the samples that are provided in the master formula document. I think it can go a long way to helping people understand that there really isn't rocket science to this. It's just kind of writing down what's happening. So, you know, it might be worth it to just keep it there, just to try to stay in the spirit of what USP mentions as a best practice. Okay.
I mean, that's a non-technical change, so I think it's.
Well, now that everybody's kind of talked me into removing it, the only time I can see, I mean, we do occasionally, or we did, I'm not sure we do it anymore because I'm not there. We did use a scale for bulk compounding on potassium chloride, bromide. So
I think I like the idea that Tara had to begin with, where so then we remove the unique, I have lost it. What page is it on again? Sorry.
So I'm also sharing it, so if you look at your screen too, it'll show what we currently have.
Yeah, I like that plan.
And then I'll go down, and this is still, so this would be 2 through 6. Good.
Okay. So let me see. Okay.
So then in F4, which we've already talked about, this is the animal patient medical record and the unique formula code, if any, would come out.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I'm lost. What?
The E4.
E4.
This is the animal patient medical record.
Okay.
Now we're just going to require the name and strike and the unique formula code.
Yes. Because there's no more if any.
And then also 2090 in the definitions.
You have to remove it.
Subsection H.
Yes.
Would come out.
So Tara, you said that on F4, we were going to add name of the compounded drug preparation and strength. because that's not in any of the other ones.
Are we, what section?
F4.
Yeah, the new S4.
Yeah, name of the compounded drug preparation and strength.
We want to add and strength there.
I think so, because we don't have that, because, yeah.
No, name and
Well,
strength. I'm just putting just so you see what it looks like.
Well, isn't that current law under 4, name, amount, and strength of the compounded drug preparation?
On mine, it's crossed out.
Yeah, so that was the proposed amendment from the committee was to take it out, but then we just put it back in as an. Okay, sorry, I was just Okay, so then what we're essentially doing, that's a good catch. We're going to go ahead and strike this and unstrike this. Do you need amount still?
This is in for the medical records. Well, the amount is going to be the container that this is dispensed, right? The amount is going to be the container.
No, 4 was. The old 4 that was struck, that was existing law. That they were, at least it's how it's prepared. Is 4 not an existing law?
I don't think you need amount.
I'm talking about this one.
Oh, yeah, but I mean.
Sure, but I'm just showing them so they know what changes they made.
Dr. Sullivan?
But 4 is going to stay, is going to unstrike and stay there.
But the new 4.
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan?
This is not the label. This is the medical record. Yeah.
Can we take a break after this section?
No.
A quick break after this section?
Okay.
Dr. Sullivan, before we go on break, if we still have equipment in, I have a suggestion that might make it more usable. If we could say about equipment, anything that is not standardly found in a typical, oh boy, this is going to be a bear, in a typical veterinary or hospital. That way, if it's some exotic, expensive piece of equipment, it has to be listed. But if it's your scale or your syringe or your measuring cup, you don't list it.
Well, the issue there is in previous regs, we have that you aren't supposed to be compounding things that are complicated or complex. Okay, so
Right.
in a different.
So can we just say veterinarians can only do simple compounding and just leave it at that?
We have that already.
Okay, sorry. I apologize.
No, that's fine. We need to get all of these ironed out so people know. So under 2091 B, a veterinarian shall not perform or supervise a performance by an RVT or permit holder of either sterile or non-sterile drug compounding when the complexity of the drug compounding exceeds the veterinarian's knowledge, skill, facilities, or available equipment.
So we have equipment right there.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Well, that also then brings back whether we need to list the equipment.
I think in the beginning.
Okay. All right.
That's what I was going to say. It seems like by having it as number 1, that way you're making the recipe book, and that I do think should have your equipment, because if I was going to do this, I would want to know, do I need a gram scale? Do I need this? Get all your stuff together and then start.
Okay.
So it seems very reasonable, and then just saying 2 through 6 go in the medical record, because I agree with Nancy about that as well. So.
Good. So I think we've got now. I think in D, Okay, so we've got that change made. That's all taken care of, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
In E, we also added some other language. Do you have that on there?
Yep.
The, wasn't, what did we add yesterday?
So yesterday on the screen, you'll see we struck out strength where it says third line toward the end, the name, it said strength, we struck it.
Yeah.
And quantity of the sterile solution, and then we added and the name, strength, and quantity of the ingredient.
Okay, any comments by the board, the committee members, either here or online? And we're talking about E. Any public comment on that in the room? We probably, I don't think I asked for public comment online for the things we've already discussed. So let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and finish this, and then we'll go back and ask for comment on everybody. So we've pretty much covered F also.
Sorry, I guess we're almost done.
Okay. So do we have? On F, are we all clear on that one? I think F is some cleanup language. We don't need a 3, the old 3, because we got, it's not necessary because it's covered in 2094 under labeling. The old 4 is redundant because we have the information on a master formula, however you want to make it. And the new 4 is necessary to identify the compounded drug preparations that, and we've got that wording changed. Oh, I know. We went back to the old 4 and got rid of
Correct.
the new 4.
Yeah, so
Okay.
now the old 4, I know it looks like 43, but the 4 is struck. So the old 4 is now 3, and then 4 is the old 5.
Okay. And then item G is cleanup language and adding permit holder. So let's go back. Now we're dealing with section 2092. Are there any additional comments or questions from the board, either here or online? Okay, are there any additional comments from the public, or any comments from the public from the room? Moderator, could you see if there are any comments from the public online, please?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. We are now taking public comment on the edits that we've discussed so far. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send those comments to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you. So what I'd like to do now is Well, I guess first of all, what we're going to have to do is have a motion to accept these regulation changes. Well, let's see.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
We did not cover 2094 yet.
Oh, labeling. Thank you very much. Getting ahead of myself. So 2094.
We need a break. We need to take a break.
Okay.
Five-minute break.
We'll do a 10-minute break. All right.
Okay.
So close. So in break, we got some discussion up here, and I'm going to turn it over to Jessica because we're going to look at possibly making some other changes to this.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here again because I was really thinking about, hold on, about the comments from Dr. Miller about the master formula form and how we could just be putting that into guidance since it's a guidance anyway, so why put it into the regulation? If we just go back to calling it a formula document and then in the guidance add a form, then it makes it less complicated. Also, my concern is the way that we are doing this with calling it master formula form in capital letters and implying a proper noun, OAL is going to look for a form. And I don't think that we should be putting that in regulation. I just recommend that we go back to the current language and strike out master formula form. You would still have that an example as a guidance, but I think the way that we're doing this could be overcomplicating it and making it more confusing for all those involved. So I was suggesting if you just want to follow along, you would essentially take this out to go to current law. No? Why not?
Because we're still changing formula document as a may. You may maintain a formula document to identify drug preparations because under D, that's the animal medical record. And if you're not maintaining a formula document to identify the drug preparations, then you have to do certain stuff. So we can take out on a master formula form, but I do believe, I think we need to keep to identify drug preparations compounded at the veterinary premises because we also need to strike the definition of master formula form, which, originally identified drug preparations typically compounded, regularly compounded at the facility. And this will help separate the formula document that identifies drug preparations compounded at the premises from the animal medical record under D. So it's either you're maintaining the formula document or you're documenting all of this in the animal medical record.
But for B, can't you just say a master formula document may be maintained, take out the on a master formula form and just say may be maintained to identify drug preparations compounded as, yeah.
That's what I'm suggesting.
So just for clarification purposes, when we're putting this together and saying why the addition to identify drug preparation compounded at the veterinary premises is necessary when we don't have it in current law, why is it necessary?
I think it's clarifying what the document is, this formula document. Right now, under existing law, this formula document shall be maintained.
Sure.
For each compounded drug preparation. So now we're taking out each compounded drug preparation. So what is this document for? And I'm saying the document needs to be clarified that it's to identify drug preparations compounded at the veterinary premises. It's no longer each preparation, it's drug preparations compounded at the premises. Or we could put to identify drug preparations regularly compounded at the veterinary premises, but I think it's clarifying.
Grant?
Sorry, I'm interrupting. I completely agree with you. I think that when you are creating a master formula form, you're binding yourself to a legal responsibility that you don't need. It's great to have one in the guidance. It's lovely, but immediately what's going to come up is OAL is going to shepherdize that form to figure out is that thing legally acceptable and possible. By the way, the form does not match the definition. So the definition says it's a list of all drug preparations. That is not reflective on the form. The form is not a list, it's an individual document, so that would have to be addressed. But I contend you don't need master formula form written there. You can just say you have to maintain a document that has the following information. In the guidance, if you'd like to provide them a sample, great. That's perfectly fine to do. Also, immediately, if you have something called a master formula form in capital letters, people are going to assume that it is a paper document, and one of the first questions that will come up is, can this be electronically maintained? So I agree with your line of thinking that I don't think it's necessary to have a master formula form as a specific item referenced in regulations. I think it's great if you want to do it in a guidance, but it's not necessary here. Oh. And I've seen boards get into trouble with this in the past, with creating specific forms that they reference in regulations. It's become a problem as time has gone on because the world just changes around us and the regulations. When you're bound to something so specific in the regs, I've seen it create problems in past situations. Thanks.
Okay, so then we would keep to identify drug preparations compounding at the veterinary premises. We would go back up here to the definitions, remove the master formula form. Well, actually, it would just be removed because it was added. I'll go through and make the non-technical, non-substantive changes to make sure that all the letters are correct. But that would.
Okay, let's go back to that paragraph. So.
What section? Sorry. This one.
So. So if they don't. They decide not to do a master formula document?
Then it's in the medical record.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Well, then did we reference? See here. So this would be if the master formula document, right? So this would be struck because this is referencing the master. Oh wait, no, this just goes back to current law.
But add master.
Do we want the or a?
I think you should leave it the, because if they're going to create a master formula document, then it becomes a thing, and that thing can be included in the policies and procedures manual.
Are there any other mentions of the master formula?
Well, I didn't hear that.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry to do that last minute, but I think it makes it better.
I'm gonna have White here for the end of the day.
Which part?
Okay, I think we better go back and ask if there's any other questions or comments on what we've just discussed from the board, either here or online. Okay,
Mr. Chair?
from the public is, I'm sorry.
So just reading real fast, but I'm understanding. So this is an either or thing. So either you have the master formula document or it is in the medical record.
Correct.
Okay.
So any public comment from in the room? Moderator, could you see if there's any public comment online?
We are now accepting public comment online. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. Let us take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the edits?
Yes, please. Thank you. And the last section before we go for a vote is 2094 labeling, and we're going to need to make some changes here too. So under labeling, A is what is required now for dispensing any products. So compounded preparations dispensed would be covered under B of section 2032.2. So office stock, we're going to have to address because now we've changed. We've eliminated unique formula code. So we're going to need, I guess, well.
Back to the current law?
Yes. So I guess what the discussion has been, I'm not sure, do we need quantity because it is what it is? It's in a bottle or some container that's that size. I'm just trying to make it as efficient as possible. So it'll be the name, I guess, that's in the formula.
Yeah, I think that sometimes, I guess the quantity is helpful. Again, I'm just thinking about some situations that I've seen where people have taken medication home that's been compounded and then they've run out, and we're trying to figure out, like, what happened. Did we?
So this is office stock.
Oh, sorry. Ignore me.
Okay, no, I know. I want you to go that direction, though,
Yeah.
and see if there's a situation that would be comparable in the clinic.
I mean, we do this for potassium chloride, and, like, we're putting the quantity that we add to fluids and things. I mean, that's not the same as office stock because that's the immediate use. But I think if the quantity is in the medical record or on the form, I don't think it needs to be there.
There.
Label.
Dr. Sullivan?
Because this is office stock, I think you need to have name, strength, and quantity because here it's of each ingredient. Because we're no longer referencing any other document that automatically listens to name, strength, and quantity of each ingredient and all the active and inactive stuff and anything added to it. Because we're deleting unique formula code, that goes away. Now we return to needing to identify for that office stock.
But it's
each ingredient.
It's identified as a name, a specific name that goes back to the formula.
Right.
In
Or
the
in the
animal
record.
medical record or the master formula document?
Office stock.
Yeah.
So once if this office stock is dispensed to a client, then that triggers A.
So, but if you've already compounded it because it's office stock, what are you referencing?
The name.
If it's not on the label of the office stock.
I know. So if we're not using unique code, then the name has got to delineate which compounded product is being made back to the formula. And so if you have the same ingredients but different concentrations, you're going to have to differentiate those products in the name.
Where? In the formula document?
Yes. If you're not giving a unique code, you've got to, and let's say you have a preparation that has ingredient A is a 10% solution, and ingredient, and you have the same ingredient in another one that has a 5% concentration, then one's going to have to be a name with some other definition behind it, like, product A and product B.
I'm just concerned that office stock seems to be, its own little universe. And we're talking about making sure that office stock has an appropriate label so that everybody knows what's in the bottle, what's in the preparation.
Okay.
Because there may not be, there's not going to be a specific animal medical record associated with office stock.
Right. But there's going to be a formula.
A formula document?
Yes.
But not necessarily, because if you're going to put it into the medical record.
You don't have a medical, if it's office stock, you've got to record it someplace.
But we don't have a requirement to specifically record all drug preparations anymore. We just took that out for master formula form.
Yeah.
So you either record it in a master formula form or document, or you put it in the animal patient record. So if you want to eliminate name, strength, and quantity of each ingredient being labeled on the office stock, then you would need to create a separate documentation requirement or specifically require all office stock to have that master formula document.
Yeah. Okay. So we are putting one back in.
Yeah, so we're going back to what existing law is. So it's not, you guys aren't adding any additional requirements for anyone. You're just going back to what the original regulation says.
But we do not need number 3.
Do you? Because now you don't have unique formula code anymore. What's up with the lot number or control number?
So that was created with the second form that we've thrown out. So it doesn't exist anymore.
Well, there was a second form in the last iteration of these proposed regulations, but this is existing law. So existing law was you had to identify the lot number, control number, either in the formula document.
See, that made no sense to me when it was, I don't know where this came from, because this is not my writing. That's why I eliminated it. We did have a unique number for that second form as that compounded preparation went through the record-keeping process. So that's what I thought we were referring to, but I don't know where this verbiage came from.
I think it's existing law is the thing.
But we wrote the existing law.
Yes, you did.
Duh.
There might be justification for it in the initial statement of reasons. I'm just wary of deleting it here when really it's just, we don't even know why it's in there. Why would we then delete it?
And what is it where's the origin? I mean, we don't use that terminology any place else in the regs. We don't use control number assigned by the preparer.
So what if we contemplate keeping this as is because it's current law, but then before this goes to the board, we can go back to that initial statement of reasons and identify why this is in the law. And then the board could discuss whether or not to strike it if
Okay.
it's necessary.
Dr. Sequoia?
No, you've covered it already. This discussion has covered my point. Thank you. I'm figuring out how to lower my hand. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So that covers B. And then C is just saying that if a compounded drug preparation needs to be refrigerated, there has to be a label on it. Otherwise, all other medications are considered room temperature. Any comments or further discussions on 2094 from the committee, either here or online? Any public comments from the room on 2094? Okay, moderator, could you please ask if there is any public comments from online?
We are once again open for public comment online. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. So, wordsmithing is time-consuming and ugly, but it has to be done. So, thank you for everyone's participation and more importantly, patience. So, what we need to do now is to get a motion from the committee.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I would make a motion to recommend to the board the regulatory proposal to amend California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Sections 2036.5, 2090, 2091, 2092, and 2094 related to veterinary drug compounding and all of the changes discussed today.
I, Dr. Sequoia, would put in a modification, a friendly amendment, all of the changes approved today. And if that's accepted by the motion maker, Dr. Bradley, I will gladly second it.
That's fine with me.
Okay. So a motion's been made and seconded. So now we'll open it up for any discussion from the committee, either here or online. Okay, any discussion from the public, comments or questions from the public in the room? Okay, moderator, could you open, can you ask for any public comments online, please?
We are now taking public comments on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we'll call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, I think we're ready for a vote.
All right, thank you. Jessica, for the roll.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Feld? Yes. Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Dr. Lazarchev?
Yes.
Ms. Laredo?
Yes.
Dr. Sequoia?
Yes.
Ms. Estrie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Let's take a lunch break till 1 o'clock. We'll be back at 1.
Okay. I sent Raynard a text. I sent Raynard a text.
Okay, we're ready to call the meeting back to order. And we're going to back up a little bit. We did some research over the noon hour to look up, let's see, let me get it.
So to be clear, we're going back to agenda item 6?
Yes.
And exactly where are we? Okay, so it's under item 6, 2094 labeling, item B3, and I'm going to have Jessica read what we looked up as and explain where this is located on the reasoning.
Yeah, so the conversation was prior that we weren't entirely sure where the requirement for lot and control number came from or why it was added to the regulation, and so we were talking about bringing it to the board and researching and making a recommendation at that time if we want to keep it or strike it. So over the lunch, I looked up the FSR, and the rationale for adding the lot control number is as follows. The required information of the lot or control number of the batch and the name or initials of the preparer allows a veterinarian to track back who compounded a drug preparation if there are questions about a compounded drug preparation.
Yes, and my comment is that the lot number and control number are not unique to any bottle. We may get 10 bottles coming in from, and these are usually controlled substances. Well, I guess they're all substances, but we'll get, a box of this medication coming in, let's say 10 bottles of it. They're all going to have the same lot number and the same control number. So it does not help in tracking it back to who did the compounding. In addition to that, on the labeling of a compounded product, it will state the initials of the compounder, name or initials of the preparer. So that's a much better tracking mechanism than the lot number and control number.
So is what you're proposing to include all of the revisions already approved by the vote, and then just include this additional proposed amendment to strike in section 2094B3, and then explain in that memo?
Right, to the board.
Right, so I guess I'd probably ask the members whether or not they wanted to reopen that vote or not, or if it's okay with everyone to go ahead and just include that recommendation in the board memo.
Okay, so the question is that Tara's bringing up is whether we want to put a motion forward to rescind or reconsider the motion that we've passed, and then open it up and make the changes today, or simply send it as we have to the board with an explanation that we've done the research and we're recommending and for their consideration to remove item B3. Dr. Bradbury.
I'm okay opening it up again and reconsidering the vote. Is that what you're asking first? Is the ability to rescind the?
Sarah?
Go ahead.
I would say that if everyone agrees that it's a good idea to strike paragraph 3 from subsection B in 2094, if everyone agrees that's okay to do, we can just add it to the board memo and move on.
Okay.
But if there's a problem, if someone's concerned with striking lot number, control number, then I would recommend you guys have a discussion about it. But if everyone agrees, there's really nothing else to do. We can address it at the board level.
Dr. Sequoia?
Dr. Sequoia, you're muted.
Okay, sorry. I do have a problem with only using initials, because I have seen over the years that at various clinics, there may be people who have the same initials, or people will leave or come in, and then you're trying to track something and it's like, well, who is this? So I would say if full names are used or full last name is used, I wouldn't have a problem, but trackability, in terms of quality control, is my concern. So I'm not really happy with striking a control lot number and just relying on initials for tracking batches.
Okay, the two answers to that. One is
Sure.
the lot number and control number is not going to help determining whose initials they are. And two is right now, throughout our Practice Act, initials are accepted as part of documenting who made the medical records, who wrote the medical records. So it's also in the section 2094, but it's also in our Practice Act. So it's existing regs right now.
Well, maybe we should revisit that when we take up the minimum practice standards.
Okay. I will make that note. Any other comments from the committee? Dr. Bradbury.
I guess I would just say that this is for the labeling of the medication, and I guess I agree with you that adding one of the control or lot number is not improving any consumer protection, or it just is. It's basically busy work, kind of sitting there and copying something down when there's multiple files that are the same lot or control number. So I guess I'm fine with striking it for the label.
Okay. Any other comments from the committee? Okay, and from the public in the room? Do you still have a comment, Dr. Sequoia?
No, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble removing that that hand.
Okay,
Has it disappeared?
thank you.
Thank you.
Moderator, could you also ask the public online if they have any comments?
Oh, gosh darn it.
We don't need a motion. Okay. Moderator?
My apologies. We are
Yeah,
now
can
accepting
we
public comment.
open the, yeah, thank you.
Again, my apologies. We are now accepting public comment on this matter. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're now going to take a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment.
In turn, formula form or unique formula code in here. So I don't think
Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to return to the agenda?
Yes, please.
Well, in
So Dr. Sullivan?
Yes, Dr. Bradbury?
I think I don't know if we have to do something different since Dr. Sequoia and I are no longer in agreement.
My understanding from Dr. Sequoia was she was okay with addressing the use of initials at a later time because Dr. Sullivan explained that the use of initials is in other regulations, not just this one. So likely, you know, when looking at minimum standards for record keeping, that issue could be addressed at that time.
Okay, is that correct, Dr. Sequoia?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, guys, I wasn't clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so no vote is necessary on this. We'll move this as we've already motioned. We'll move it to the board for their January meeting. So then we have agenda item 7. On my notes, I wrote, this is very straightforward, but in this business, nothing is usually very straightforward. But so while we were going through the document, it came to our attention that we should comment on the requirement that all clients need to be offered information about the medications that are dispensed. We also concluded that the information that is required to be provided to the client should be written and should not only satisfy the requirements of Business and Professions Code Section 4829.5, but should also include the formula in case that there is an accidental overdose or emergency in which the poison center needs to know the ingredients and the concentration of those ingredients. So you'll see on page 3 of our guidance document what we have added to satisfy that. And I'm not sure that I need to read that. I would just ask if, as you do read it, if there's any problems with how we've expressed this and what we're saying. We're still saying it should be written, but I think to me it's pretty critical that clients have that formula on a Sunday afternoon if there's a problem. Any comments from the committee? Do I need to read it?
It's in the posted material.
Yeah. So any comments from the committee, either here or online? Okay, any public comments from people in the room? Okay, moderator, could you ask the public online if there's any comments for this action item?
We are now accepting public. Yes, sir. We are now accepting public comment on item 7. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if you have a request for public comment.
There's a motion requested at the bottom of page 2.
Right. Got it.
Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Thank you. Do I have a motion for action for the agenda item 7, please?
So moved to approve.
We're going to need the language that you can find on the bottom of page 2.
I move that the committee approve the proposed guidance on veterinary drug compounding and compounded drug preparation formula. Oh, that's not right. Wait a minute. Somebody else better do it because I'm on the wrong page. And I'm clicking through.
Dr. Bradbury?
Oh,
I can
okay.
do it.
Action requested, yeah. Okay. I, Dr. Sequoia, move that the MDC approve the revisions to the guideline, to the guidance, and recommend the board adopt the revised guidance on veterinary drug compounding and courtesy compounding drug preparation formula form for posting on the board's website and dissemination to all licensees and stakeholders.
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion's been made and second. Is there any discussion from the committee, either in room or online? Okay, any discussion from the public in the room? Moderator, could you ask if there's any discussion from the public online?
We are now accepting public comments on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, please. Dr. Miller?
One late entry, sorry, Grant Miller, CVMA. Just in looking back at page 4 of the guidance document under animal patient medical record documentation, and then comparing it to section 2092F, will there be a reconciliation of these? For instance, currently in F, as I see it, and I will admit my page has gotten a little messy here, the directions for its storage and administration, have those been struck from F3 in section 2092? Are they, so, but then in the guidance document, it's still there. So will there be a reconciliation to just make sure it matches? Because we made so many changes today. So can we, I think that's the only one. I'm trying to flip through as quickly as I can, but I was too busy eating lunch to do this. So just perhaps as a general comment, could we just make sure that, any changes that we made are reflected? Because I think the guidance document is very good.
Yes, we will do that. So this will be, I guess, looked at again by the board, so,
So what you're looking at under agenda item 6 is just proposed amendments to the existing regulations. So those have to go through the whole process and be enacted before we'll make any further changes to reflect those amendments to the guidance document. So it's going to be a minute.
Okay, got it.
But this guidance document reflects existing regs.
Fair enough. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Are we ready for 8?
No, we need
Oh, yes, vote.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps? Yes. Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Dr. Lazarev?
Yes.
Ms. Laredo?
Yes.
Dr. Sequoia?
Yes.
Ms. Estrie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Action item 8 is an update from the Complaint Process Audit Subcommittee. Dr. Bradbury and Dr. Sequoia.
Dr. Sequoia, do you want me to go over this?
That would be great, since you are senior to me in terms of being on this item for longer, so you've got more background on it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so this is, as you all know, an ongoing process, and in the interim since the last meeting, we did have a chance to complete a few items that we've been working on for some time. We did continue with the review of subject matter expert witness opinions and gave them feedback. There was, I think, one case that we looked at this time, and I felt like that was pretty helpful, or hopefully it was helpful to the subject matter expert, and also just to us, for us to understand kind of how these, how they're doing. The part here on page 1 about recruitment and training is very encouraging. We need more subject matter experts, and we have an additional 11 that have been recruited, so that's great news. It looks like they, some of them attended the medical board's training, and that kind of brought back to the forefront, although this not from the medical board training, but the last time the subject matter experts went to the human medical board training. Only veterinarians say that, human medical board. But anyway, some of them came back and felt like the case scenarios that were given in the training were not helpful because they were not related to veterinary medicine. So we were asked to provide some examples that were veterinary based. So we did come up with a few examples, starting with small animal examples. And we used, really it was one case and 4 different scenarios around kind of the same case, but one of the scenarios was no departure from care or from the standard of care. Another was an extreme departure. There was a medical records issue in one of them, and then just a general departure of standard of care or from standard of care. So that was, those 4 scenarios were given to the subject matter experts through kind of a SurveyMonkey test type situation, and had them go through it. We had our own explanations on there, and then they were given the opportunity to write their explanations and ask questions. We're just now getting all of that data. I think some of the feedback was that we could hopefully provide some other practice type examples, and so we're looking for some help with that, other than just small animal. But overall, I think the general feedback so far has been that it was helpful. So I'm hoping that it was, and we'll continue to make make additional case examples and work with the experts to just improve that whole system. There was another part. Oh, the training. I think Rob had mentioned in here that I don't think it came up, but we are going to be looking at dates for another kind of presentation like we did in the spring to help them. We provided a reference list. It's a very long list. The reference list so far hasn't been condensed or organized. Dr. Sequoia is working on organizing that, and the list really comes from the veterinary medical schools list for the students, and it really is just meant as something for our experts to be able to refer to if they're looking for a topic and sort of what books are available or what textbooks are available. It's just one of many references they can use. I think the biggest thing, and the thing that was most important to me, is the criteria for subject matter experts, and we had a pretty decent discussion about that. We looked at the current statute, which states for the criteria, a veterinarian who reviews and investigates an alleged violation pursuant to Section 4875.2 shall be licensed in or employed by the state either full-time or part-time and shall not have been out of practice for more than 4 years. And that's really all we have to go on in terms of the current statute. Our current status is a little bit different, and it states that a subject matter expert must possess a valid and current California veterinary license and have 5 years of clinical practice experience within the 6 years immediately preceding application submission, and has no past or current disciplinary action taken against license in this or any other state. So that's where we're starting. We looked at what is required of other experts in other health, not health sciences, what's the term for it? Healing arts, that's it, sorry. Other healing arts boards, because we felt like that might be informative and helpful. And then during this discussion, we were talking about how much we pay our experts, because we're trying to figure out ways to recruit more experts. But and then in this document that you have in front of you, it has actually what the pay for our experts are versus the other healing arts boards experts. So looking at all of these, you can see that they vary quite a bit, both in pay and in what's required of them. But a couple of the things that we felt might be an important thing to consider, one in particular I think is important, is that they have an active practice. In our statute, where it says have 5 years of clinical, or not statute, but our requirements, the 5 years of clinical practice experience within the 6 years immediately preceding application. I am wondering if it would be better to say they have 5 years of clinical practice experience in the area of expertise listed and current employment in that setting, or something like have an active practice. And then in some of these healing arts boards, they have they've defined a number, like the hours, and perhaps have something about are active in this subject area being reviewed. So I wanted to bring that up to you guys because I feel like that is something we'd like to, refine and bring to the board at some point in terms of whether we want to change these requirements or update them. And then in terms of the hourly rates, I don't know if that would help recruit people or not. I can't say whether that's what's holding people back from applying. So anyway, those were, I think, in the subject matter expert criteria is the part that I really would like some feedback from you guys and what your thoughts are.
May I add on to Dr. Bradley's very complete coverage of this item?
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Sequoia.
Thank you. Very complete coverage. Thank you, Dr. Bradbury. The other thing I would also like to mention is that our very competent, overloaded Executive Officer Jessica is also looking at the North Carolina program. It looks like there's some stuff that they are doing that may be helpful to us, and so we will of course update you with at the next meeting with our next report.
Yes.
But which does have bearing on enforcement. So anyway, are there any thoughts or comments about our current criteria? And
you mentioned modifying that criteria. Do you have specific verbiage that we can look at?
Not yet. I wanted to discuss it with you guys before. I can do that for next time if that would be the way to go about it.
Yeah, I think we need a recommendation from your committee that we can sink our teeth in, and then we can do the wordsmithing on it.
Okay, I'll bring that to you guys next time.
Okay, good.
Perfect.
Okay. Any other comments, Dr. Sequoia?
No, thank you.
All right. So then we don't have any action item here, so we will accept the report as comments from the public.
All right, so my comments are in relation to 4875.3B. Dr. Bradbury, we also have looked at this extensively and are reading it a much different way. CVMA actually sponsored a bill in, I think, circa 2008 to change this law. And the reason was because at that time, there was an in-house subject matter expert that was quite creative with her interpretation of facility standards. So in relation to 2030, in relation to the actual, requirements for signage and whatnot in the building. So when we read this, we read it, and perhaps Tara or Jessica might have some ability to shed light on this. 4875.3 is written in relation to 4875.2, which has to do with issuing of a citation. But I believe that if you read the way this is written, it has more to do with the minimum standards of the premises pursuant to 2030. So, a premises has to have, the exit signs and the fire extinguishers and all of those things. And when you look at 4875.3A, it really talks more about, compliance with deficiencies, and then if there's a deficiency, there needs to be allowed reasonable time. So the way we read this, if Jessica cites someone for a minimum standard deficiency at a premises, Jessica's obligated, I believe, to have a subject matter expert review that before she issues the citation. And it has more to do with premises minimum standards, not subject matter expert for standard of care or for, deviation from standard of care. I don't think that's what this is. Is that incorrect? Yeah, so 4875.3b, I think it has more to do with the specific action of if Jessica chooses to cite someone for like unsanitary conditions in the premises, she's obligated to have a subject matter expert review it, and then if they are reviewing that, they have to have these certain qualifications. But that's limited to the issuance of a citation for a minimum standards violation, which I'm assuming is couched in 2030, of like the premises. Does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying. I don't understand it well enough to.
Yeah. It might take a little bit more sleuthing because I don't know whether or not citation is a general term made for the very first thing you decide to say to someone when you say, we think you've done something wrong, or if citation is truly limited to cite and fine, which is what I think this is getting at. I don't believe that this section was ever intended to say, if you have a subject matter expert at the board, this is what they have to have. I think that this was intended to say, if Jessica is issuing a citation for a minimum standard violation pursuant to 2030, then someone has to review it. And if they are reviewing it, they have to have followed these criteria. That's how I see it, read it.
And also keep in mind, 4875.2 was dramatically changed as part of our sunset bill. So a lot of that content related to the subject matter experts is actually not even in 4875.2 anymore. So we might want to look at changing the statute. I think it's worth noting that when you look at the requirements of the subject matter experts for the other boards, that's not in their statute, right? Right now, the requirements that we have, the standards that we have aren't in statute. So if you think about it, the requirements we're putting on the application and the requirement in this actually are conflicting, right? They don't match. You might want to consider taking it out of that statute altogether. And that way, when there are concerns with subject matter experts and the board wants to reevaluate the criteria, you can just do that as a matter of policy in the application itself for subject matter experts and not have it in statute. Otherwise, you're going to constantly conflict with it and confuse the matter.
So just to clarify what Jessica just stated, 4875.2 used to require a subject matter expert to review allegations of violations prior to the executive officer issuing a citation. It's been significantly overhauled, like she said, so that requirement's no longer there. But yeah, I think 4875.3 is probably just an issue of cleanup because the former requirement's gone, so.
I believe that the requirement was relating to premises issues. So if there was something that wasn't terribly egregious that you felt could just be a citation, as long as you ran it by a subject matter expert who met these criteria, then you could issue a citation for that. And I that was what we recalled when we changed this law. It was due to the subject matter expert saying, well, they should have. It was the doors of the surgery room, and she was saying, well, there need to be these doors, and there was nothing in the law that said that. And so it got to the point where we said, well, look, we need to know what their qualifications are to make that determination, and so that's why this was put in. But it was not for, there's a formal accusation, and you need a subject matter expert to say whether or not this person violated a standard of care. That was not the intention of this statute. So I know, because it's really all that's written, but I don't think it is for, I don't think so. It's going to need to be looked at by somebody who's way smarter than me, but I just remember what this was for at the time we did it, if it helps at all. Thank you.
Okay. Need to go online? Dr. Bradbury?
Do we know how long this pay scale has been at $75 an hour? Like,
I don't.
so as long as you've been.
Oh, yeah, it's way before me.
Okay, because I mean, there's inflation and cost of, so anyway, okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm not sure you can raise it high enough to induce somebody to do it voluntarily. I think, people that are going to be doing this have an interest in doing it more than the financial. I might be wrong. You know better than I.
Well, we still want to be fair. And,
Okay. Yes. Moderator, could you ask for any public comment on this agenda item, please?
We are now accepting public comment on agenda item 8. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay, next agenda item is agenda item 9, update from Inspection Subcommittee, Dr. Laredo and Dr. Sequoia.
Oh, I got a promotion. I like it. Thank you, Dr. Sullivan.
Yeah, well, it's getting late.
Well, since I'm the only thing standing between us and break, we'll summarize the background that we have here. If you remember, the subcommittee was tasked with reviewing the 20% inspection mandate that we were not meeting. And just for a brief background, I think we had at that time 4,500 premises, so 20% was roughly 900 inspections per year that we weren't making. So we made a couple of changes and we were monitoring progress. The first change was the merger of the inspection and enforcement units, and we have been monitoring that progress. We did see that there was an increase in the inspections that were performed, and I believe there was an increase in cases closed as well. So one issue that we were having with the inspections was the availability of inspectors. Just as we've mentioned in some of our other agenda items, retention is difficult. Every veterinary professional is extremely busy right now. So we currently have 3 veterinarians and 5 RVTs, and 2 of the veterinarians are not available to perform inspections. So in honor of National Veterinary Technician Week, I would like to give kudos to the RVTs who are keeping the inspections program going. Thank you very much for that. We also had the mobile inspection app that we were relying on, and this was a little bit of a holdup because of funding, and I'd like to give also kudos to our executive officer for some heroic efforts on her part in getting funding through a grant to fund some research on this app. We have yet to roll that out. There's been a little bit more research going, but we did get the full amount of funding that was asked for, so thank you very much, Jessica. And the other thing we've been doing is monitoring North Carolina's inspection program, and they do things just a little bit differently. They inspect every practice every 2 years. They have split their state into 4 different regions, and they have contracted full-time veterinarians for each region. So they pay their inspectors $35 to $40 an hour. We have, I believe, a flat rate, and their inspection checklist, I believe, is a little bit different than ours. One major change they have is they do unannounced, or they do announced inspections. So this is something that began during COVID, but they found that it was working, so they continued it. So they do routine inspections announced, and I think that's going to be our biggest topic of discussion here. The subcommittee has asked for feedback from our current inspectors in California, but the announced inspections that they do give more of an impression that it's a learning experience rather than a penalty. So the subcommittee is asking for some discussion today on our thoughts on announced inspections versus unannounced routine inspections.
Thank you. Let's open that up for discussion. I'd ask Jessica to maybe comment on what the North Carolina interest was in this, how they, what their comments were on this.
Yeah, so, and I provided the full presentation from the North Carolina Veterinary Medical Board inspection presentation. That was what they presented at AAVSB. That's in your materials. But when I asked them why they, during COVID, why they switched to scheduling versus unannounced, because we continued to do unannounced inspections during COVID, what they said is that they found during COVID, they would go out often and the facility was closed at the last minute due to a COVID outbreak. And so they would have to figure something else out, and they decided they're just going to, for that point on, they were going to schedule the appointments. There were some concerns of I think, some natural concerns of, well, what about the ones who are going to hurry up really quickly and just fix it enough to where the inspector comes out and then it falls back? And what if, like, there was this concern that you're just going to see these less violations that you would have caught normally. And what they found is that they didn't see any less violations that they were finding prior to scheduling. They were seeing the same amount of violations. So it wasn't that there was a rush to clean something up, and so you saw fewer violations. They saw the same amount. They also made the point to say if they scrambled and got everything in compliance before the inspection, they made a comment of, so what? So they complied. They're in compliance. So why do we care if they scrambled before we did it or they are scrambling after we did it? They're still coming into compliance, which is the whole intent of inspections, is to educate them. They noted a lot of benefits to scheduling ahead of time. The dynamic with the facility and with the staff was much better right off the get-go. There wasn't as much stress that the office was feeling. It was a lot, they were prepared to walk someone through where sometimes their inspectors go out, they might not have the right staff there on time, and so there's a lot of challenges with getting those individuals prepared. And so they just said that it went so well that they decided to continue with the scheduled routine inspections. And so that was one thing that I wanted some feedback on, because I think that's something that should be considered, especially if our intent is for education for the routine inspections. It's not to catch them in the act of something they're doing wrong. And so that's what I wanted some feedback for, because I do think that a lot could be said that if it is educational and we find something, and we're not trying to catch them in the act. That's just my thought. So I wanted some feedback.
Okay, comments from the committee, both here and online. Dr. Bradbury?
I think it's a great idea. I think it seems, I know that when, I think it would be a win-win where people at the clinic won't be as adversarial feeling. I think it would build rapport. They're more likely to be compliant. I think I don't see the harm in doing that. I think it would be better for our inspectors and not waste their time as much. Like you said, if they just show up, it's sometimes difficult to have somebody available to walk them through. That's my comments on that. I've been interested in hiring our own in-house inspectors, like as a full-time position for a while, because I feel like we aren't fulfilling our mission of protecting the public by, we just don't have the number of inspections. We don't have anywhere near the number of inspections. And this is incredible. It's like, wow, this is really neat what they're doing. I don't know that we have the budget for that, but I keep wondering if we can. I know we're looking at getting the new, the computerized system, but we only have one veterinarian that's available. Like, is there any? I know that's not what the question was, but are we considering that at all?
to hire full-time veterinarians. I think that would be really costly, but I'm happy to look into what that would cost the board, because when you have a full-time employee, obviously you're looking at benefits and everything like that. So we can look into it and bring that back for sure.
I feel like we're trying a lot of different things, and I mean, 41 inspections in a year out of how many premises is just not a lot, and I feel like that's one of our weaker kind of points of the board is our inspections. Not that the team is weak. I don't want to say that at all. I think they're doing a fantastic job with the resources. But how do we, I mean, they're charging for each inspection. I don't know, that would be just something to consider.
That is, they are charging per inspection. I believe they were charging $125 per inspection, and so the facility would pay that once they go out. I think one thing to keep in mind, though, too, is it's not just a matter of hiring a full-time inspector. The problem was also if you had the inspectors go out and do all these inspections, then to have the staff to stay up top of them to complete that, right, to follow it up. And what was happening when I started was they were doing all of the inspections, but then the team wasn't able to actually get to it for a couple years, and by then the inspection's already 2 years old, and so there wasn't follow-up with that. And so that's something that we would have to be mindful of too, is if we were able to increase the number of inspections that happen, that there's staff on the back end to do that. And I think that's where the concern was, because, I mean, historically the board's never been able to support what it was even prior to the 20% mandate. They weren't even close to what it was before, and it was said, we don't have the funds to have the staff to keep up with this. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the other concern, is we definitely can do more inspections, but then to actually follow up with them, that's where the problem was too.
If we had a full-time veterinarian, they would be doing some of the following up.
So another thing in the memo is talking about what North Carolina also does is they have the inspectors actually go out a couple weeks later and do the follow-up inspection. And that way you could document the compliance at that time, rather than having my staff afterward go and make that communication of what's missing and what's not, and where there could be compliance issues. And that's something to consider too, is to have that the inspectors be the ones to do that follow-up. Because another thing that we've seen with these inspections, we've had instances where right now, say the inspector goes out and then gives them 30 days to provide correction documents. Oftentimes that would be in the form of photos. And so we had this case where the surgery room was full of boxes and just really, really cluttered. And so part of the corrections, the facility uploaded pictures and showed, like, see, it's clean. But when we went to the inspector back out, because we got another complaint, it looks like that the facility just moved the boxes over, took a quick picture, and then submitted it to us. And so obviously that's a concern, and so I think it's definitely worth looking at having the inspectors do the follow-up. That would reduce the amount of time that my staff has, plus it's right away, the feedback, so yeah.
And they're familiar with the problems that were happening in the first place, and they have a rapport, and I mean, it could be, they would be doing more than just the inspections. They would be also handling the follow-up. So.
Yeah, and it also would be less work for the facility to document and then upload all the correction documents if the inspector's already there doing it for them.
Yeah, I would like it if we looked at that as an option. I don't know how anybody else feels about it.
Any other comments, Jennifer?
Yes, I just wanted to respond to Dr. Bradbury's suggestion. I did have one concern, and it's the same concern that we had when we were considering a full-time non-licensee civil service employee. If we do have one licensee, assumably a veterinarian, who is full-time, we're assuming that they're no longer practicing. And that's where I see the value in contracting with the current licensees, is they are currently practicing and they have a more keen eye to pick up on things that somebody might not if they've been out of practice for a little while. So that's my input on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a great PR move to say that it's education. I mean, we say it's educational, but from my experience as being an owner, I never thought it was educational. I thought the hammer was over our head. So I think making the appointment is a very good PR move and really proves that it is educational. So I really like that idea.
So So the subcommittee also had asked our team to reach out to our inspectors and to get some feedback and their thoughts on moving from unannounced to scheduled. So I'd like, Patty, if you don't mind giving just a quick summary of what the inspectors' feedback was.
So the feedback from the inspectors was mixed. It was pretty much half and half. Some do see that there would be a benefit to reaching out, and because sometimes when they arrive, things get chaotic, and as you say, it's supposed to be educational, but everyone is on edge when the inspector arrives. So it would be beneficial to reach out to them beforehand, and then that way they could possibly have, their documents that we look at, to have those ready. Medical records, drug logs, cures reporting, and have it all ready, and maybe even designate ahead of time someone that's going to be walking through with them during the inspection. So those were the pros. Some of the cons were because our inspectors do have other jobs, so they go out when they have free time, that scheduling the inspections might be problematic. Or you schedule an inspection and then the MGL or the facility cancels at the last minute, and so then you would have to have something in place to what would the consequences be, or what is the procedure if they continually reschedule or something like that. What would the process be? They feel like sometimes the facilities might just prolong it or keep canceling or something like that, or that they would, like Jessica mentioned, hurry up and clean things up, and then as soon as the inspection is done, then just kind of go back to how they normally do business. So one of the inspectors did mention, well, maybe we can just try it, or is it something that you could leave it up to the inspector? But is that feasible to just have the inspector make the decision if they want to schedule it with the facility, or it should be something kind of across the board for all inspectors? So that was the feedback. So like I said, kind of split down the middle.
So I do have a question. What was your comment on who is canceling it?
The facility. If the facility canceled it.
Well, if a facility cancels it, then they get a surprise inspection.
Maybe they just show, yeah.
So that was a question I asked for North Carolina. What happens when those who aren't entirely thrilled with us going out there says that they can't and they're not available? Mm-hmm. And they said, well, they do their best to be accommodating, but they don't leave it open-ended. They don't say, hey, we want to do an inspection. When are you available? It's, we're coming out here during these 2 days. What day and time works the best? Like giving them very limited options of scheduling, but they don't have like a lot of wiggle room. They did say that if they said they're not available on those days, they say they try to work with them to a point, but if they're having one person go out and drive 3 hours, they're not going to be able to choose, but we're still telling them we're coming. I did ask them what happens when they refuse to let you enter, and they haven't had that before. So we've had that before, but we have remedies in place for that. But I don't think that would be so much of an issue, because we would work with the main point is to make sure the inspector themselves are available. So the inspector would say, I'm available on these 2 days to do the inspections. That's what we send to schedule the inspection. Don't leave it open-ended for whenever they feel like it. It still gives the facility enough of a heads up to say we're coming. So whether they like it or not, we're coming, but we're telling you we're coming. We'd like to work with you. As far as leaving it to the inspector, I'd be concerned about that. It just looks like some are unannounced and some are, to me, that kind of defeats the whole purpose. But I think just letting our inspectors know, it would be based on their availability first and foremost, and then work with them to a point. But then after they say, well, I keep delaying it. We're like, we're coming on these dates. That's your option, you know. So put parameters on it.
And so overall, for the folks that were not too crazy about this idea, the thought is that when they come in unannounced, that it holds the MGL more accountable rather than if you know ahead of time. So I think that was one of their concerns too, is, you know, making sure that they're held accountable.
And I think for that, I think it actually helps us to hold them more accountable if it's scheduled, because then they know that we're coming and they have the option to participate. Because right now, there's oftentimes where our inspectors are going out and the MGL's not there, and they're like, well, I can't, I'm doing other things, or I'm seeing other patients, I can't be there. And at least we can say, we told you ahead of time we're coming, it's your choice whether or not you're going to be there.
Yes, the last inspection we had was at the same time CVMA was having a CE meeting, and both my partner and I were going to it, and our only technician was going to it. And when they arrived, half the documents we had to show, you know, radiology, training, and all of those types of things. Nobody else knew where they were at. So, and I would fall back on, if it's educational, then I think we'll get a lot more cooperation.
And our routine inspections and the probation inspections, those would continually be unannounced, because those are ones where we either have proven issues or reason to believe that there are more issues happening. But this is just for routines that we would go to scheduling.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any more comments, Dr. Bradley?
I just wanted to kind of think through what Jennifer said about the veterinarians not being actively practicing and the concern there. And I guess I would just ask what would be better, having no inspections or very few inspections with veterinarians that are practicing, or having people who have practiced recently but maybe are not currently practicing but doing a lot of inspections and actually looking at the facilities. If we have to do a trade-off, what would be better? To me, it would be having these facilities, having our eyes on the facilities by a licensed veterinarian that's had, you know, recent experience, than actually having only, you know, 40 inspections in a year. So.
And I would kind of agree with that, in that the inspection list is a given. And, I mean, and RVTs do them. I'm not sure that an active, as opposed to expert witnesses, I think there's a difference there as far as what that qualification needs to be.
If I could add to that, Dr. Sullivan, we also
Sure.
don't know for sure that having the full-time position would increase the likelihood of getting a veterinarian. We're just assuming at this point.
Yeah, I was not referring to the full-time position. I was just making a general comment on who's doing it. Okay. Any other comments from the committee? Okay, any comments from the public in the room?
Grant Miller, CVMA. I actually had a inspection that was pre-planned because my base of operations is my home, and the inspection went really well. I mean, it was very informative. She did manage to find one expired bottle of vitamin B in the bottom of my acupuncture kit, but it was good. I mean, it seemed to be a really easy way to do it, and I asked her, when do you want to come? And I based it around her schedule, and she came out. So I think that was a really good idea. Regarding the idea of researching a full-time in-house person, there's no reason an RVT can't do this. RVTs actually probably spend more time running these practices than a lot of veterinarians do. A lot of them have practice management training. when I get calls for regulatory compliance, I would say probably 75% of the time I'm speaking to a staff member or an RVT who's calling on behalf of the doctor. So, you know, if we're looking to try to budget something like that, I think RVTs probably would work at a lower price point than a veterinarian would. I do think that the travel budget would be quite extensive for that, and that might have to be something that's really carefully looked at, especially given gas prices and all those things. But I don't see the need for having a veterinarian do it. Really, it can be done by an RVT. Thank you.
And to add to that, so we do have 5 RVTs, and I actually wanted to thank CARBDA for sending out more announcements. We are ramping up our recruitment for RVTs as well. So we are, and that's a newer thing. So we're hoping with the increased recruitment out there targeted to RVTs would help as well. But that just started, so.
Okay, moderator, can you open up for questions from the public online, please?
We are now accepting public comment on agenda item 9. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. Okay, thank you for that update and report, Jessica.
Sorry, one last thing. I just wanted to put a plug in there. We are in need of subject matter experts that are from holistic medicine side. We have some holistic medicine cases, and I just need to throw that out there because a lot of our subject matter experts right now are not comfortable reviewing cases that involve holistic medicine. So if anybody does know anyone, if you could send them our way. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is an update and discussion regarding board's access to care task force. And I have that report. On September 6th, Dr. Nolan, Jessica, and I had a Zoom meeting to discuss what the MDC was directed to do by the board at their July meeting. The board has an access to care task force whose board members are Ms. Parado and Dr. Nolan. The objective of the task force is to determine action the Veterinary Medical Board can take to increase access to veterinary care for consumers and their animals. This task force has met 3 times this past year. CVMA also has an access to care committee, of which Dr. Nolan is part of. They have done considerable research on this issue, including identifying multiple layers involved in this as it relates to underserved areas. Dr. Nolan said that CVMA put it best when they wrote a letter to the board stating, and I'm quoting, "Veterinarians alone cannot solve the problems that stand as barriers to veterinary care for so many pet owners. Because the health of the pet is linked to the health of the family, the problem of access to veterinary care should be considered a public health and social service issue. Collaborative steps must be taken to help underserved families access veterinary care for their pets to ensure communal health and welfare. Collaboration of government agencies, private nonprofit groups, pet owners, and the veterinary profession are key to addressing this issue," unquote. So the charges to the MDC are, 1, look at the regulatory policies that may be forcing the veterinarians to think that the gold standard is the only level that they can practice, which many clients cannot afford. This includes, and now I got what is the word? Spectrum. This includes defining what spectrum of care is and how to safely practice without running into problems with the Practice Act. It may also include developing protocols for wellness exams that an RVT may do under the supervision of a veterinarian. Number two, Veterinary Medical Board needs to develop outreach programs to the profession about how to use spectrum of care and how to record it properly in medical records. Also developing Q&As to put on the Veterinary Medical Board's website to explain this issue, again, as an outreach program. And to make sure, number four, to make sure that this understanding is part of the training of the expert witnesses. And five, review our regulations to see if there are other areas that make spectrum of care easier, such as looking at regulations 2032.3 record keeping. It has been stated that this section of our Practice Act is very prescriptive compared to regulations in other states and regulations of other medical professions within our state. As reported earlier, that was also of concern when we heard from the CHRB. At the January meeting, we will be asking CVMA to give us a presentation on their RVT wellness appointment program. We're going to put it on the table to discuss and figure out if we can make it work or if not, but we need it on the table. There are a lot of discussions around the country related to additional tasks that a licensed technician may do to increase revenue for the practice, which will allow the business to be much more efficient and would allow an increase in salaries for technicians. This discussion is based around mid-level practitioners. Some of these include the workforce pool of licensed technicians and others don't. We need to watch these programs very closely. I will be appointing a subcommittee to work on this issue and we'll have a updated report at the January meeting. That's the end of my report. Are there any comments from the committee and that are here and online?
I would just say I think it's very important as well, and definitely think that RVTs are part of the solution for access to care. So excited to move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
And happy National Vet Tech Week.
Yeah, a good time to bring it up. Any other comments? Any comments from the public in the room? Okay, moderator, could you check to see if there are any public comments online, please?
We are now accepting public comment on agenda item 10. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. Let us take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. Agenda item 11, elections of the 2023 committee officers. I believe we'll start with the election for the chair. Marie?
I would like to nominate Leah Schufelt for chair.
Okay. Is there a second?
Jennifer seconds.
Thank you.
Ms. Schufelt, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Are there any other nominations? Then,
Does the current
seeing
chair
none-
wish to stick?
I'm sorry?
Is the current chair interested in continuing on?
I think he has plenty of work.
Not exactly what I asked. Okay.
All right, thank you. With no further nominations, the polls are closed. We have to vote?
We had to have public comment and a vote.
All right, is there any public comment from people in the room on the nomination? Seeing none, moderator, could you open the line to ask the public if they have any comments?
We are now accepting public comments on the nomination. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. Let us take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, please. Thank you. Hey, Jessica?
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps? Yes. Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Dr. Lazarev?
Yes.
Ms. Laredo?
Yes.
Dr. Sequoia?
Yes.
Ms. Esri?
Yes.
Motion carries. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Now the nominations are open for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Dr. Sullivan.
I second that.
Dr. Sullivan, do you accept that nomination?
Yes. Okay, are there any other nominations? Come on. Okay, comment from the board? From the, okay, public comment on the nomination. Seeing none, we'll turn it over to the moderator to ask for any public comments from the public online.
We are now accepting public comment on the nomination. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the nomination?
Yes, please. Thank you. Our next item on...
We need to take a vote real fast.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps? Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Dr. Lazarev?
Yes.
Ms. Laredo?
Yes.
Mr. Sequoia?
Yes.
Ms. Esri?
Yes.
Motion carries. Congratulations.
The next item on the agenda is future agenda items and meeting dates. Jessica.
So the 2023 meeting dates, January 24th, April 18th, July 18th, October 17th. Provided a laundry list of things that the MDC is currently working on. We do have to add on the access to care, as Dr. Sullivan mentioned in his report. So with that, any questions or want to move anything else up?
Add me to the cannabis guidelines,
Okay.
please.
And then do we have anything we need to do for the blood banking?
Well, I think just based on the comments that you provided, we probably should do some back and forth with CDFA to provide that guidance. So perhaps instead of all, I just put your name for now.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Public comment. Okay, any comments from the public in the room? Okay, hearing none, moderator, could you please ask if there's any public comments online?
We are now accepting public comments on the matter. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants.
Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. Let us take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you. And that is the end of the agenda for me, so I am calling this meeting closed.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.